Hello, podcast listeners. Boy, this episode, we're going to start off with babysitters. We're going to talk about grandparents, and I'm going to admit something that I wish I could tell my dead mom. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of JJ Meets World. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. J.J. Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. J.J. has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirls as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called J.J. Meets World.
Okay, podcast listener, I'm going to tell you about who made me the man I am today. Now, full credit to my parents. They did a wonderful job in some respects, but they were rather neglectful in a lot of ways. At least they didn't abandon me completely. I was left with a series of babysitters growing up, and all of them that were around long enough have a special place in my heart. I want to start with babysitter number 1, Jennifer Baumgartner. Jennifer Baumgartner, I think, was probably like a junior in high school when she started watching us, and she lived a block just down, the one block down, and she included a lot of people who sphered into my life in interesting reasons, one of them being like she dated previous guest Tim Casper, and so the Blenders were a big part of like a certain era of my life
too.
Yeah, right. So to me, Jennifer Baumgartner was the first person I ever fell in love with. I was in love with Jenny Baumgartner. She had the most beautiful singing voice. She had energy. She was so much fun. Everything about her. And in fact, I still call her Jenny to this day, even though I know that she goes by Jennifer. And there, for a long time, whenever I'd see her in our adult life, she's like, I have a picture of you and your sister from the first day of like JJ's first day of first grade and Chrissy's first day of, preschool, for whatever that was. And for whatever reason, I'm wearing a referee's uniform, like black pants and then a black and white striped shirt. And my sister's wearing a little dress. And it's a picture that she must have come over and taken with us on the front lawn of our house, because that would have been like her senior year of high school, something like that. And Jenny had a little tiny car and she drove us around everywhere. I remember she took me to see Gremlins 2, which scared the piss out of me when I saw it in theaters. And she was just one of those people who was incredibly influential in our lives. And I also realized that she shared a special relationship with my mom, which is my mom had another person who was old enough to do things, kind of like a personal assistant. So I remember one of the things that Jenny did is she also got paid to like pick up our dry cleaning and stuff like that. Around Christmas time, Jenny would be the one who would wrap all of the gifts and get them under the tree. And Jenny will forever be one of those people I think back as like, I hope that the time that she spent with me was influential in the fact that like she's a mom now, right? Mm-hmm. And so she got to practice being a mom a little bit early on. And after that, we had a babysitter named Kristen. Kristen, I don't remember how we found her like as a babysitter, maybe like just an ad, but she was a college student. And this was the first time I ever got to see what life is going to be like when I get out of the house, because she had an apartment she shared with 3 other girls. And so I got to be their little mascot. And I remember going over there a couple of times, and they had they're like rocking chairs, but on the floor. I mean, I call them Nintendo chairs. So it's a single piece rocker, but it's on the ground.
It's like a gaming chair, basically.
Right. It's very popular for gamers. And I loved those chairs so much. I thought those were so cool. So much so that her parents owned a furniture store in the Lakes area, And for Christmas one year, she gave my sister and I each one of these chairs.
Aww.
And I had that thing that thing saw me through my original Nintendo, through my Super Nintendo, maybe up to my N64.
Wow.
So it lasts a long time. In fact, I'm surprised that my fingers aren't horribly mangled after all those times that
And I forgot I used to have a chair very similar to that too. It got
It was
destroyed
awesome,
back in the
right?
day. Yeah.
So cool. I loved those type of chairs. And Kristen had a series of boyfriends while we were dating, and she had a series of boyfriends while we were in her charge.
Edited out of the episode.
Yeah. And she was just fun. Like she was old enough. I think she turned 21 while she was watching us. And then of course, there's not as much time anymore, like after that type of thing. And, my sister and I are 2 years apart. So even at the point of where I didn't need a babysitter anymore, Chrissy still needed a sitter, and my parents were going to trust me to watch over my sister.
Mm-hmm.
So Kristen fulfilled that need for a long time, and she was awesome. I adore her. In fact, every now and then I try and think of what her last name is because I'd like to know what she's up to today. We got at one point a wedding invitation, I think, to go to the wedding of the most recent boyfriend that she had while they were dating. So it worked out between them, which is always nice. But the babysitter that made the biggest impact on my life is a woman named Mary Van Lith. Mary worked at Dawson Insurance, which my grandfather ran. And so I think my mom had gone there a couple times and be like, who's in the pool who would like to, do this? And so my grandfather had recommended Mary. And Mary was, she was she in her? She must have been in her mid-20s when she started babysitting us. Why do I keep saying dating? Started babysitting us. Because I think she must have turned 30. And Mary was our sitter for like 6 or 7 years. She was around for a long time.
It's a long relationship then.
Yeah, very long.
Dating for a very long time.
And in fact, like her husband, Mike, she went on her like first date with Mike while she was sitting with us. And I remember there was a morning when she would watch us during the weekend when my parents would go to the Twin Cities or to the lakes. And I remember one day she was yelling downstairs like, "Wake up, everybody, wake up." And so we'd wake up and we'd come upstairs and she's like, "Mike kissed me last night. Mike kissed me." And we're like, "What?" And she's like, "Yeah, Mike kissed me." And so not only did we have Mary as this babysitter, but then we had Mike. So they would constantly be together in this relationship. So they spent all of this time together. And Mike was this kind of cool older brother type figure that I had never had before.
Okay.
He was also incredibly gullible. So he drove like an old manual pickup truck. And so there were a couple times when he would give us rides and like watch us when Mary was working. And we'd be like, "Well, it's okay. Chrissy and her friend will just lay down in the bed of the truck. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it." That's a horrible idea. Don't put children in the bed of a truck and then go on the interstate, right? And I also remember getting him to go to Take Two Video with us and convincing him that we had already seen the Jerry Springer tape. And so we just want to watch it again for fun. And so we convinced him to, for those of you who don't remember, like in 1997, Jerry Springer's show was pretty popular, and there was a series of videotapes that was like Jerry Uncensored.
Yep. Too hot for TV.
Yeah, it would show, it would include swearing, like blood and fights, and then some nudity. And so we were like, "Yeah, why don't we get this again? Yeah, this is a good one. You think this is a good one, Pete? Felt like you think this would be a good one? Yeah, that'd be a good one, JJ." So, but it was so much fun. Mary also influenced a lot of stuff in my life that has really come to fruition. So number one, I saw Star Wars for the first time ever because Mary found out, and I must have been like in 7th grade, that I had never seen Star Wars at all. Never seen it. No, it was before, probably like 95. And so she had the VHS copies, the 80s initial release VHS copies. And so there was a Sunday and she goes, "You guys aren't going to do any chores. You're not going to do anything. We're going to watch all of Star Wars today."
Wow.
And she explained like how these things went together and all the stuff that goes into it. And she talked about going to see Return of the Jedi in the theaters and being shocked that when they took off Darth Vader's helmet, he wasn't James Earl Jones and felt slighted by that. And after that viewing, first of all, that's the first time I had ever binge watched something, right? So when you watch all 3 original Star Wars films in a row, you're talking about like 7 hours of content, I think, all said and done, like
Probably.
2 hours and a
Something
little
like
bit
that.
of change
Yeah.
for each. So that was pretty exciting. She was also a huge fan of the show Pinky and the Brain.
Oh, nice.
So, like from the Animaniacs. And
Nice.
so we would watch Pinky and the Brain together. She also got me into must-see TV. So Mary was the type of person who Thursday nights were meant to watch NBC programming because they figured it out.
Yep.
ER, Friends, everything that played on Thursday nights were a must. And so my parents played in a dart league on Thursdays. So Thursdays meant Domino's Pizza and must-see TV
Nice.
with Mary Van Lith. Mary's parents become a part of our lives. So they farmed down in South Dakota, and whenever Mary's mom would come and stay up here, and Mary was watching us for like a weekend or a couple of days, Mary's mom would stay with us in our house. So it was almost like having an older sister whose aunt came as well. And here's the thing. Mary's mother makes the most amazing chocolate chip cookies I've ever had in my entire life. I don't know if she's putting methamphetamine in it or what it is, but they are the best. And so once she knew I started to like those, every time she'd show up with 2 giant Ziploc bags full of Mary's mom's cookies, which I thought was
Nice.
just awesome. So we've got Mike, we've got Mary. They are 2 people who just mean the world to me. And Mike pops a question and they decide they're going to get married. And I think that's amazing.
Wow.
So they ask my sister and I to be in the wedding. Now, not to just be like a ring bearer and a flower girl. We were the only 2 people who were in their wedding party.
Aww.
They went to this really small off the way church. I think there's maybe only like 15 people in attendance, but my
Cute.
sister and I were the only 2 people who stood there
Oh, cute.
for the wedding, which I thought was pretty powerful. And really, in all honesty, Mary said, like, you taught me how to be a parent. Like, it's great because I got to turn you back over to your parents. And if there's ever any major punishment, they were the ones that dole it out.
Right.
But there was a day, like, my sister went to the mall for 6 hours and Mary was pissed and flipping out about it. They also got to know like my friends, and they were the first people who I think made me understand that it's all right to be weird. Like your personal weirdness can be a badge of honor for the things that you do. Going even further down the line, Mike's mom lived in Colorado Springs, and they asked me, would you want to come help us move Mike's mom back to Fargo? And I thought, sure, I'll go on a road trip with you guys. And I had just gotten my permit. So like, they're like, you drive, you can enjoy it. And so I remember driving her Jeep Grand Cherokee, like all the way to Colorado Springs. We ate at a great restaurant called The Happy Farmer, where they brought you soup in old, like galvanized buckets. And they would drop it on your table and like plunk. And then it would be like an old like cookie being like, can I get you a scoop of soup? And I love that restaurant. When my sister decided to go to college in Colorado Springs, I told them right away, like, oh, we got to go eat at the Happy Farmer. We got to go eat at the Happy Farmer. We get there and they're like, the windows are boarded up at this old barn like place. Yeah. It was
Sad farmer.
now closed farmer. Right.
Yeah.
And my heart broke a lot when
Yeah.
that happened. I had such great memories with Mike and Mary, and they taught me just so much about what it's like to, be an adult. Mary had a Lazy Boy recliner at her apartment that I loved so much that when she decided to get rid of it, she offered it to me, and I was over the moon. And that thing moved with me to like 3 apartments, and then finally one day I was sitting on it. And Jill got onto the Lazy Boy with me to like, have a little snuggle, and the whole thing just like the metal all bent and became U-shaped, and we had to get rid of it, which was a sad day because I had that recliner forever, man. They also like some of my best memories in my entire life revolve around these 2. Mike took me and a kid I knew named Ben to Sleepy Hollow. Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow. And it was at the old Century movie theater. And there's a little kid who was carrying 2 large popcorns, like running up the aisle. Now this is back, when they only had an aisle on both ends, right? And so we see him running. We see him fall, like boom, and he disappears because the seats are there, and the popcorn goes flying, and he doesn't get up, and he doesn't get up, and Ben leans over, and goes, "Hey, you okay?" And this kid just gets up and darts out of the theater, like leaves the popcorn and everything everywhere. He's just so embarrassed by what's gone on that he takes off. Mary not only worked at Dawson Insurance, but also did like some bartending at the Sunset Lanes. And so she taught me everything I know about dealing with drunks, like you don't take any lip from them. You don't let them say anything because the second they start talking, they're not going to shut up.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I ever saw someone who was hungover and I realized like, you got to be quiet when someone's hungover was the day after she turned 30. And Mike was like, "Mary's a little worse for wear today. She had a rough night last night. So why don't we just keep it nice, easy." She also shares a birthday with my sister. Same day, different year.
Wow.
Different year. I can't say enough good things about Mary and Mike. They are just two people who like shaped my life. And I had so much fun with them. They took me to movies nonstop. The only reason I saw like "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" was because of Mike and Mary. Mike and Mary made me go to see As Good as It Gets when it was at the Cinema Grill. And I remember Mike in the middle of it being like, "This is crap," because we had ordered hot wings and they hadn't arrived. And he got up and complained about them. And then they brought us hot wings during the end credits. And he's like, "I'm not paying for these."
That place sucked so hard.
It did suck. It was just a horribly run business.
Do you still talk to these two?
Every time I bump into them randomly. So I will see them, let's say, at Grand Junction. And I'll say, "Let's get together and have dinner." Because they've got two great kids of their own now. And it's the best laid plans, right? I say it, but I never follow through with it. And so my vow is that now that I've talked about this at such length, I'm going to make it happen. Because the last time I saw her kids, I think her son was like in second grade and her daughter was maybe in kindergarten. And now I want to say, I think the kid's maybe ready to graduate from high school, so time flies. Yeah. Mike taught me how to drive a stick shift in his truck, which is really nice. And he's very patient about it. Oh, when I went to go move his mom. So it's weird, right? Like these people, imagine yourself. Okay. And you're in your early 30s and you're going to invite a 17-year-old to come with you to move your mom in several states over. Okay. First of all, my parents said yes. Sounds like to me like this is the long con kidnapping, but just, we'll get past that. Number two, what value? But I worked my butt off, right? And like I helped and I loaded all these things. The best thing ever was I remember what it was like to just like have this moment where I laughed at someone so purely and so full of joy. Like when the chair burst underneath me that one time when we were recording and Tucker lost it. I saw
one of my favorite memories still.
I saw Mike's senior photo like framed and on his mom's wall. And he has... in the movie Coming to America, the Soul Glow, that glossy curl stuff that he used. So he used that.
Got it.
And nice. Oh my God, it was so thick. That's so thick. I thought if I touched the photo, I might get greasy. And I thought that was the funniest thing ever. And I loved it so much. And when we helped his mom move back to Bismarck, she gave me that photo when we were unloading everything. My music taste at that time heavily influenced. So Mary got the Alanis Morissette Jagged Little Pill album.
Okay.
And so we listened to that all the time. It was just like having these cool people who had more life experience than I had and knew all these neat things. Not only that, but like since she worked for my grandpa, she knew all the stories. In fact, this is a very cool is a weird word, but so when Mary was younger and on the farm, her dad had a handgun and her brothers and their friends were playing with it and the gun misfired and shot her in the eye.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And she's very lucky to be alive, but she had this eye that was kind of opaque, like and milky a little bit.
Okay.
And at one point, they found out that there could be this surgery, and essentially she'd get a donor eye. And so while she wouldn't be able to see out of it, it would not like look as odd. You'd have a more traditional appearance. Mm-hmm. And I remember there was a question of like, since it wasn't, medically life-saving. They weren't going, her insurance wasn't going to cover it. And my grandfather quietly stepped in and paid for it.
Oh, okay.
Because he felt like this is something that she really wanted and needed. And she had been such a service to him there and a wonderful person to our family. I mean, Mary was a member of our family.
Mm-hmm.
I really do believe that she was just one of those people that you had to like hold close and tight to you. And I will never, ever forget how much they influenced my life. And if I got a call tomorrow and they said, let's have lunch, I know we'd be able to sit down and it's not like a moment had passed.
Mm-hmm.
We'd have all this good stuff to talk about and we'd have all these things to reminisce about and laugh. Mike was the first person who ever talked to me about politics. I don't know if I agree 100% with where he's at. I think he might be a little too libertarian for my personal taste, but I remember like him having a conversation being like, you don't need to talk to a kid about this type of thing. I remember Mary catching me with a bunch of hickeys on my neck and being like, what is this? And I was wearing a sweatshirt, like a hooded sweatshirt all the time. She goes, it's too hot out for that sweatshirt. Something's going on. And so even as we got to be older, like they were still a staple in our lives and they would watch, our pets if we were gone and just amazing human beings. Just so awesome. Did you have babysitters at all growing up?
Oh, a ton.
Yeah.
A ton of them. I mean, a lot of them would be like students of my dad, or I have a ton of cousins, a ton of older cousins. So oftentimes when my sister and I were getting babysat, it would be with cousins of ours that were in town or something like that. But I think one of the first babysitters I remember distinctly, his name was Miguel. And I can't remember how my parents met him, but Miguel came over a lot and watched us a lot. And I remember he was the first person who I ever saw beat Super Mario Brothers on Nintendo.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I watched him play through and be like, oh my God, I just watched this guy beat Super Mario Brothers. That's the coolest thing. Troy Parkinson, previous guest on the show, would babysit Brianna and I a lot. And Troy might have been my favorite one.
Cool.
Because he would dress up and play like different characters and stuff with us. And he would just always make us laugh like crazy. Brent Moon is another one who was a big Trollwood kid for a while and is the son of Karen Askeruth, a good friend of my dad's.
Oh, yeah.
And so, he babysat us. My cousin Rachel babysat us a lot for a period of time when she was going to college in the area. And there were many more, names that I'm not totally thinking of right now. My earliest memory of having a babysitter is from back in Grandin, where we lived before we moved to Fargo in '89. And I have this distinct memory because I was kind of girl crazy already, like at the age of 4. I was like, I like girls. They're awesome, right? And I remember we had some neighborhood girl was our babysitter. To me, she was a much older kid, right? Much, much older kid. And I remember she had put my sister and I to sleep. We were in the same room, and she had a bunch of her friends with her, and they all just sort of stood in our room at the other end of the room while they watched Brianna and I try to sleep. And because they had nothing else to do, there was like 4 of them. And
okay.
I remember being like, there's 4 girls in my room, and just being like,
They're watching me sleep.
They're watching me sleep. They're watching me try to sleep. But had a bunch of babysitters growing up. Miguel is the one who sticks out in my mind, and probably Troy Parkinson beyond that.
Did you ever do any babysitting yourself?
No, not I mean, I watched Solomon, my little brother, a number of times. I've watched nieces or nephews when it was needed, but I don't think I've ever been hired to go be a babysitter for someone.
Do you know what the national average per hour a babysitter makes right now?
What?
$25 an hour.
Woo!
I know.
Nice.
$25 an hour to eat macaroni and cheese and watch Disney Plus.
That's how badly parents want to get away from their fucking kids.
They do. They're like enough of you for right now.
Yeah.
I took a class at Merit Care, which is now Sanford, like a babysitting certification class. Took that the same year I took boater's safety and hunter's safety. So I think my parents were like, let's throw some spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks.
See, my parents never felt the need to be like, Tucker needs to be occupied with something.
Yeah.
Like, there were a few things, but never really forced, ever.
Really?
It never
Swimming
felt
lessons?
Like, I did that once, and then they could tell I didn't like it, and so I didn't go after that. They tried a few things. I wasn't into it. They just kind of stopped pushing me into stuff. I did soccer, But beyond that, I'd be like, just leave me alone. I'm fine. Just leave me alone. I'm busy.
You know what
I've
I wish they had for
comic
kids?
books to go read.
I wish there was like a cheese class I could take as a kid so that I would, by the time I'm an adult, I had a more discerning taste and palate when it came to cheeses.
I was more cerebral than I was, much more cerebral than I was physical. So I didn't want to go out and do a bunch of physical stuff. I wanted to sit and learn about things that I thought were interesting. I wanted to watch movies or read comic books or draw.
My babysitting course, at the end of it, you got a certification so that when you were going out to get babysitting gigs, it was 22 girls and 2 boys. And I remember at one point they had a nutritious lunch for us that was like a banana and a sandwich and a bottle of water. And I remember just being bored and like playing with my bottle of water, like swishing it back and forth. And the cap came off and it ended up getting all over my sandwich. And so I was like, ugh. And the person was like, well, you need to eat your lunch. And I'm like, my sandwich is wet. And then they had to they teamed you up for like role play scenarios. And so I remember this girl, and like I was young to take this class, right? Like I was probably on the younger side. And so this girl who was older, probably like 15, 16, getting ready to do some serious babysitting, was like, okay, here's the scenario. The child is missing. What's the first thing that you do?
Call 911.
And like that's what they want you to say, right? Is like,
okay,
call 911.
Look at me, all certified to babysit.
Find an adult, essentially, is what they really want you to like find an adult. And I'm like, well, okay, so how old is the child? And she's like, that's not part of the scenario. And I'm like, well, I need to know like where he could get lodged. Like, am I looking under the bed, or is this kid able to fit in cupboards or like a coal shack?
Is the family wealthy or are they poor? Because if they're poor, he's probably he's in the alleyway. And if they're wealthy, we're talking about a kidnapping situation, which at that point, I don't there's much I can do.
I don't need to tell you.
Answer the phone, make sure the cops are aware.
Lady, I've seen Baby's Day Out. I know how this thing works. All right. And at the end of the day, what I did learn that day, though, which I thought was valuable, is the first time I ever became CPR certified. I learned the Heimlich maneuver and like how to give a baby a Heimlich. Do you know how to like dislodge something from the airway of the baby?
Mm-mm.
So you don't do like you don't just use like your forefingers to do like the Heimlich or something like that. I'm showing Tucker and he's got a big smile. You actually put the baby in your palm on his tummy, his or her tummy, and you do the back.
That's right.
And it's on the back to get the airway to open up. And so I still remember stuff from that time when I was babysitting. I remember only babysitting like 2 or 3 times. Now, my sister babysat like a family of geniuses. And I remember her coming home.
Like the Royal Tenenbaums?
Exactly. And I remember her coming home one day, and the little boy was like already a championship like violinist. And so he played, like he serenaded my sister for like an hour playing this violin. And then he goes, and if I practice for an hour and prove to you how good I am, might I be able to do the dishes afterwards? And she's like, yeah, go for it. And so she would come home and she'd have like all this extra spending cash. And I'm like, how'd it go? And she's like, hey, fiddles now. So I listen to a bunch of Southern fiddling and that type of thing. Nowadays, I don't even know most parents I know don't really do babysitters the way that like we did. You could meet a girl for the first time ever to come to your house to babysit.
Sure.
And nowadays, I feel like that is totally unheard of.
You got to look at their Yelp reviews. Got to look them up in LinkedIn.
Show me how you give Heimlich to a baby.
Yeah.
And of course, I don't know how much you'd want to be a babysitter in this world of small cameras, because you'd think that they're probably watching you all the time.
Sure. Absolutely.
You know, for us, it was great because we'd eat a bunch of junk food. The garlic twists that they used to have at Domino's. Oh, chef's kiss.
You know, I just bought Adventures in Babysitting on VHS.
Great movie.
Because it's in the original wrapping.
Whoa.
Right. So it is an officially originally sealed tape. And I don't really own anything that's in their original sealing. And you can tell that it's the original seal or that it's the original wrap because it's going to have the watermark of the video company on it. So I've never even seen that movie.
What?
But I bought it because, well, it's sealed. That and Mr. Mom, bought them at the same time.
Oh,
because they're both sealed.
Oh, Mr. Mom is a great movie. Terry Garr is wonderful in it.
Isn't that Michael Keaton?
Yeah, it's Michael Keaton, but Terry Garr plays his wife.
Oh, okay.
Who is the reason why he becomes Mr. Mom.
See, I thought Terry Garr sounded like a male character.
In Mr. Mom, they refer to a child's blanket as his whoopee.
Oh, I was Whoopi.
Yeah, he's like, it's time to get rid of the whoopee. In Adventures in Babysitting, I remember that was the first time I fell in love with Ms. Elizabeth Shue, and I've fallen in love with her over and over, and in all sorts of movies. Like there's the one where the weird like monkey watches her take a shower. That's a weird one. Primate maybe is the name of that. Hollow Man, The Boys. I mean, Hamlet 2, where she plays herself, Karate Kid. Elizabeth Shue was I had a big crush on the Shue. Big crush on the Shue. And she's great in that movie. Also in that movie, Anthony Rapp, who later goes on to star in the Broadway cast of Rent. And so that's a great movie because when I first took Jill to Chicago, there's a lot of Chicago landmarks featured in that movie. And so she wanted to pretty much just go on the Adventures in Babysitting tour and be like, where's the slanted building? And where's this? And where's, a big part of that movie involves the Thor comics.
Oh,
like
really?
The Marvel Thor comics.
Oh.
Yeah. The young girl is obsessed with it. And they go to a place called Thor's and he's got a giant hammer. And she's like, he is him. He is Thor.
Huh.
So Chris Hemsworth, eat your hearts out.
Did you know that they made The Sting 2?
Like a sequel to The Sting?
Yeah.
I did not know
It's
that.
called The Sting 2.
Really?
And it's like they're at it again, but it's not Redford and Newman. Yeah. It's just two schmucks. I think it might be straight to video. I bought it today on VHS, so it's next to The Sting.
Good. So that you
on my
get
shelf.
You get to continue that life. Keep that one going. Oof, oh boy.
I want to know what happens next.
Did you ever, as a kid, did you ever do anything that you like got away with that at this point, like the statute of limitations is beyond it, so you're fine, like talking about it, like you ruined a rug or you backed the car up by accident and maybe you blamed it on your sister?
No, I mean, I was a really mild-mannered kid.
Right, you were a loner.
Mm-hmm.
A loner kid who just wanted to be left alone with his comic books in his brain. Mm-hmm. So of course you're not going to get into mischief.
No, I'm trying hard to. But it's nothing that I didn't get caught for. Let's put it that way. Anything that I did bad, I definitely got caught for it. I remember the first time, like feeling, oh no, I've actually done it now. I'm so dead. I think I was 6, and me and Brianna and our friend down the street, Matt Peterson, somehow discovered that the garden hose is a lot of fun to play with, especially when you're inside the garage. It's really fun to spray everything with the garden hose, including like the motor for the garage door and everything else. And so Dad came in and saw me with it in my hand, like spraying everything with it. And he screamed at us, right? And sent Matt Peterson home and Brianna to her room and me to my room. And I remember Dad coming into the room and looking at me and going, if you ever do that again, I will nail you to the wall. And he pointed at me, and I will nail you to the wall. And he pointed at the wall. And in my mind, I pictured my dad crucifying me against the wall, thinking that's what he meant. I'm going to nail you to it versus, I'm going to throw you against the wall, which is also super violent. Yeah. But that's what he said. And I remember just thinking my dad's going to crucify me because I ruined the garage. I broke the garage. But no, I mean, I always fessed up immediately after I did something wrong because I knew that, being in trouble was always, it felt like the worst thing to me. My anxiety would just spike so hard if I thought I was in trouble for something. So I'd always want to get out from underneath it as quickly as I could. And I knew fully fessing up and getting yelled at or whatever was the quickest way to no longer feeling like I did something wrong.
I mean, the Catholics have got it right with confession, right? Like, getting it off your chest. And, you'll pay a penalty, but it's kind of a little secret.
I only did confession once, which was that first one that you do when you're like your first confession or whatever as a kid.
Were you Catholic?
Yeah, I mean, my mom's side is Catholic, and so
I didn't know that.
We were at when we first moved to Fargo, we were going to St. Mary's, and then after my parents divorced, Dad married Pat, and she was Methodist. So when we were with him that weekend, we'd go to Faith United Methodist Church, and when we were with Mom for a bit, it was St. Francis. Then it was Holy Spirit for a long time. So yeah, Mom's side of the family is pretty Catholic, Irish Catholic.
Oh yeah, of course, right. That hard Irish background
Yep.
of yours.
Yeah.
I
Every sperm
certainly
is
did.
sacred Catholic.
I did a lot of stuff that, like, looking back, I'm like, oh well, that's pretty messed up. But the one thing that I wish I could tell the truth on, I no longer can.
Okay.
Because it was a crime against my mother. And it happened on my way to a Dave Matthews Band concert. She had lent me her car. So I'm in my mid-20s.
I think
right?
you told me this before, if I remember correctly.
And the time I had previously gone to see Dave Matthews in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, which is the home of the first Playboy Mansion, as well as Gary Gygax, the guy who invented Dungeons and Dragons.
Gygax?
Is it Gygax?
I think it's Gary Gygax.
So the first time I had gone out there was this, like, Phil had rented a townhouse that was part of a resort, and it was nautical themed, and there was this hollow plastic, it was a sailor, like an old grizzled sailor with a white beard, and he was holding a little pipe, and it was probably 2 feet tall, and we named him Captain Willie. And we brought Captain Willie home with us, and our friend Jared put Captain Willie underneath the, like, porch of his house in Fargo. And a year later, when we're going back, we went to go get it. Well, at one point, Captain Willie's feet had, like, rotted off or had been broken, and so there's just this hollow void inside. And so I was like, well, we got to bring him, but, like, it's so hollow that, like, if you were to tap on the outside, now that it's been structurally, the fracture point has been hit, we could do further damage. And I said, what we should do? Let's go to Max Hardware, where our friend Travis works, and see if there's something there that we could use. And so Travis suggests we use expanding foam. Now, expanding foam, for those of you who know, you essentially spray it, and as the foam hits oxygen, it begins to expand. So you use it to fill cracks where, like, vermin might get into your house. It's great, but it is incredibly strong. So, like, when you fill the cracks around, like, windows and stuff like that, like when you're installing a window, you just put a small bead of this in and it'll expand. And if you put too much in, it'll actually push and warp the wood, making it so the window won't open or close. So we get a can of great stuff, and we put a full can into this thing, and it's expanding, but, like, it's only expanded about halfway in. And I'm like, God, I kind of expected it to, like, do more than this. It says it's supposed to do, like 40 cubic feet, but this isn't nearly 40 cubic feet full of stuff. So we get a second can, and we unload the second can in there. And the second can looks like it's kind of old because it's staying liquid most of the time. And we don't really think about it. So finally, the next morning we come out, and he has now Captain Willie's bottom looks like Slimer from Ghostbusters. Kind of, how he's just like bulbous on the bottom. So we take it and we're like, all right, we're perfect. Like, it filled up all inside, and, like, he knock, knock, knock. He's hard as can be. And we start on our merry way to Wisconsin. And we stop at, it's like 105 degrees, and we stop at the Chippewa Falls bottling plant for Leinenkugel, and we do the tour. And then we go to the gift shop where you can buy soap made with their beer, which is cool. And we get back in the car, and we're going down the road, and I can hear what sounds. Oh, actually, I can make the sound for you. It sounds like this. And I'm like, what the hell is that sound? It sounds like a pop bottle is slightly open. What's going on? So I have Phil look in the back, and he can't find anything. He goes, uh-oh. And so apparently we put so much expanding foam in there that, like, it stopped the pure oxygen from getting in. But so now oxygen is just kind of seeping in, and it's continuing. So his, like, one of his eyes is completely blown out, and, like, the foam's coming out. And so the noise was coming from this foam expanding and, like, taking in oxygen. Well, a bunch of this great stuff, expanding foam, got over on the seats, the leather seats in the back of my mom's car. And I'm like, listen, we got to find a hardware store, because I know Dow makes a chemical wipe that you use to, like, clean up this stuff if you get it on a piece of, like, your work equipment. So we get these wipes. They don't do anything. And I'm like, MKE, methyl ketatine ethanol or something. And the guy goes, we've got that. And he goes, but this is really for, like, stripping paint. And I was like, give it to me. And Phil's like, we need brake cleaner, which, by the way, brake cleaner is like it's a super chemical that's used to, like, take grease off of brakes. So we try all 3 of these, and the brake cleaner actually ends up doing the best job with getting like the stuff off, because it's a goop. It's not even like it's just these like puffs of foam.
Right.
It's goop that's spread all over this thing. The only problem is that we take a good look back, and now we have discolored the leather, and all over that whole area, like, and it's not uniform, right? It doesn't look like this happened because you parked it too long in the sun, and it's noticeable, but not that noticeable. Like, it's black leather and it's the back of the car, so there's not a lot of light that gets in there. And Phil's like, what are we going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. So I called a dealership and I said, hey, how much would it cost to get these things recovered? And he's like, well, what is it? And I'm like, black leather. And it's, a car that's 4 years old. And he's like, probably like $2,000. Oof. And I'm like, okay, so Oof. what's more costly, $2,000 or a lie? $2,000 or a lie? And I said, and I might not even have to lie if I just pretend like I didn't know what this was. So I decided I'm not going to worry about it until I get home. So I get home and I think to myself, my mom's not great at packing stuff. So what if I'm the one who brings us up like a couple weeks later, like, hey, what's the deal? Like, what's happened in the back seat here? Looks like someone had like nail polish remover that like leaked and did this. And so I decided not to. And maybe like 6 months later, my mom said, like, have you seen this thing in the backseat of my car? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, this like weird discolored area. And she goes, I don't know what this is from. But she wasn't like really mad because, I mean, it didn't wreck the seats in any way. It just didn't look great.
She wasn't mad because there was no way in that moment to connect it to you.
She didn't
Had
know,
it been the very next day or when you got home, she would have been pissed.
Or if she had known that she would have understood that this was a dumb thing that I did. Why did you do that dumb thing? Are you dumb?
I figured the next step was going to be getting shoe polish to go and try to color in the
so the first time someone sits there and like sweats a little bit, like it comes off on them. No, so I don't tell my mom, and then 2 years later she has a stroke and passes away. So I never had a chance to tell my mom the truth. Now the irony of this whole thing is, after my mom's death, my car took a crap, and so that ended up being my car. So I was cursed with the telltale heart of the back seat, which was, you should have told me the truth. The truth shall set you free. And so that was one of those moments where, and I probably, if I had really thought hard about it, my mom wouldn't have been mad if I had told her about that, right? And what's she going to do? Garnish my allowance? Didn't exist anymore, at that point, like, no, I've got a living girlfriend.
What she could have done is be like, hey, guess what you're paying for?
Right.
And it costs this much.
Yep.
That's what it would have been.
I'm being like, oh, that sucks. Can I borrow some money from you? Would that be all right? Can I, and my mom's the type of person who would be like, you're going to work it off. Right. And she'd give some kind of thing like, you're going to watch my house while I'm in Florida. Right. Essentially saying like, you can come and stay at the house for the month while I'm in Florida and use the Wi-Fi and the cable and eat all the food. So, but yeah, there were a good amount of things that I got away with as a little kid, like the Jerry Springer tapes, right? Like that was me just being clever.
Mama Luke had this story growing up when she was a teenager, and so she got along real well with her dad, not very well with her mom at all. Her mom was super strict, her dad was not. And her dad was always helping her get out of jams with her mom in like one way or the other. And this one thing that happened was, they had 2 cars. He had a car, and his wife, my great grandmother had a car, and Mama Luke one day got permission to use mom's car, great grandma's car. So she's driving it around and hits the right side in the front, this like a part of the covering of the wheel or whatever, and dents it in real bad. And it's mom's car, and she's upset. So she is able to get a phone call in over to where my great grandfather was working at the time. He comes over and he sees it. He goes, okay, I'm going to get this fixed. We're not going to say anything to your mother about this. Okay. So he goes in, he drives the car to like his buddy, this mechanic guy, and they end up having to replace the part, like this piece with another one that the guy had, of a same color red, but it was much lighter. It had faded a bit. And so you can now see that the very front part of this car now has a faded piece on it. And Mom Luke was like, how are we going to say anything about this to Mom? And he goes, you let me worry about that. Okay. Like a week later, Mama Luke hears them have a conversation. And my great grandmother was like, did you notice that on the front of my car, it's lighter on one side? And he said, well, I kept telling you, you park your car in the same position at the school parking lot, it's going to get bleached by the sun. And so for the rest of her career, she would back her car into a different spot in the parking lot because she thought she had left it in a corner for too long and had gotten bleached by the sun, specifically that part of the car.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. And I don't think Ma Pumphrey ever learned about it, and now both her and Mama Luke are dead. So there's no way the secret is safe forever.
The old family like legends. My grandfather at one point, my grandfather's a guy who went from 0 to 60 with his temper, right? Never like hurt any of us, right? Like didn't use physicality, but he would shout and scream if he got mad about something. And was not a good guy with children just in general, right?
Okay.
Great businessman, wonderful friend to people.
Gordon or Dawson?
Dawson.
Okay.
And so, when someone's really mad at you and they do something and you're like, oh my God, don't laugh, but all you want to do is laugh.
Mm-hmm.
So my cousin Andrew and I are at my grandpa's cabin. So my cousins from Arizona used to drive up in early June and stay through late August, and they'd live at my grandfather's lake cabin.
Wow.
Because he had a guest cabin.
3 months, huh?
3 months, yeah, every year.
Wow.
Every year.
Wowza.
And they finally got their own cabin, I think, once the kids were old enough to like not be there every year.
Okay.
But so, and I think my grandfather liked it, right? Because there's somebody that, my Aunt Ginny was a great cook. And so there are plenty of people there to like do the thing, kids could do the weeding and the mowing. So he didn't have to do that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, but my grandfather hated half finished cans of pop. He would blow a gasket if you had a half finished can of pop. And so he goes to the Cormorant store, which is the little grocery store nearby, and Andrew and I are sitting on the porch, and he comes by, and you can tell he's in a huff, and he goes, I don't want to see any more of those goddamn half cans. I bought another 2 packs of this Yellow Mellow. And because he called Mellow Yellow the wrong thing, we both go, and we're holding in laughter because we know the second we laugh, we are going to be in
deep shit.
Deep trouble. And so we're trying to hold it in, and we had to watch him trudge across the whole yard and into the house, and we had to hear the screen door slam before we lost it. Oh my God. And so even now to this day, this has got to be 30 years later. If I see Andrew, we talk about Yellow Mellow. And it's just great.
My grandparents never disciplined us. I don't remember them ever needing to.
Oh, yeah?
But we worshipped our grandparents. Like, we worshipped them. My Grandpa Mac, my mom's dad, very calm, very quiet. Not meek at all, but very gentle. And Grandma Mac was just constantly taking care of people and cooking and cleaning and doing everything. She was the one who was doing everything, basically, right? And then Mama Luke, who you know very well, was just like the funnest old lady on planet Earth. So like I never had to deal with being worried that one of my grandparents was mad at me. Not a single time can I recall that ever happening.
My grandma Gordon, it was no hidden secret that myself and my cousin Jim were her favorites. And my sister drives her nuts even to this day. But, and like, she wasn't like a super fun grandma. Like she brought us to play bingo in Gardner at the Fireman's Hall once every year and stuff like that. And like her birthday gift to us was she'd buy tickets to the St. Andrew's banquet where she was honored by, would John Gordon's wife please stand up because he started this with me in, 19 whatever. But my grandmother had cancer like in her nose, like in her like back of her nasal passage. And so she had radiation therapy on, like on her face essentially, which left her completely without a sense of taste. So when people talk about their grandmother making all these great meals, my grandmother literally told me at one point, it all takes like cardboard. So I just eat to survive. So she'd eat the same thing for every single meal. She also had these super arthritic hands, like so much so that at one point, like she had to have surgery to kind of like stretch the hands out. And she would eat Oscar Mayer bologna. And do you remember how they used to package bologna where like the bologna was like shrink wrapped in this like yellow encasing? She couldn't peel the backing from it. So what she would do is put her foot on it, and she had a pair of needle nose pliers that she'd use with both hands to pull to get it started. And so when we were cleaning out her kitchen after she passed, there were like 3 pairs of needle nose pliers in the drawers, like where forks and knives
Those
were.
were the bologna pliers.
The bologna pliers. I also sent her a Christmas card one year that featured previous guest Jake Harchie completely naked sitting on a toilet. And that hung on her fridge for like 5 years. And
is that where he's sitting down taking a squat because he poops naked?
When he poops, he takes off his clothes so that they don't smell.
Even though they're right there.
So we were in Minneapolis, and I'd open the door, and he had this long hair, and he was on a cell phone. So you see him talking on a cell phone, and he covers his genitals, and I took a picture of it. I probably have that somewhere still. Just some really good times. But my grandma was funny when she wanted to be, and she said little things that, seem to kind of show how common she was. Like the beer Michelob, she thought was Michelob. Okay. And so she'd last for a Michelob Light. And she had a leather pouch that she would keep cigarettes and a lighter in that was like the height of fashion, I'm sure, in 1977, but is really outdated by the early 90s. And she watched Jeopardy every night and Wheel of Fortune, and just a woman who liked what she liked. She had one thing that everyone wanted after she died, which was a Christmas decoration, and it was the like facade of a church that had these little blinking colored lights in it, and she would hang it on the wall, but of course the cord, would have to go all the way down to where it plugged in. And it was just a cheap little plastic thing. No, nothing big, nothing important about it, but everyone wanted that after she had like passed away. And I think my cousin Stacy ended up with it, so good for her. Also, at one point, my grandmother had she was a teacher growing up, and so someone had given her like a stuffed bear that like was a teacher, and then for Christmas they also gave her like a stuffed bear that said like I'm on my way to bingo or something. So all of a sudden everyone's like, "Oh, Alice collects bears." And so a year later, she's like, "Enough with the goddamn bears. I've got enough. I got a whole room dedicated to these fucking things now."
Yeah.
You got to stop it with the teddy bears. Yeah. And so I remember like after she had passed, they're like, "Everyone come in and choose a teddy bear." And I'm like, if we are choosing these bears one by one, we're going to be here for 10 years. But yeah, and I remember my grandmother also, my parents went to Europe for like 3 weeks, and my grandmother watched us during that time. Speaking of babysitters. And so
grandparents make the best babysitters.
They are the best babysitters. In fact, I know that my in-laws are itching to be grandparents so that they can babysit my kids, I'm sure. Because you just return them, right? You spoil them rotten, and then you return them.
Right.
Love that kind of thing. I also love the story, too, of you had a roommate at one point, and when we were talking about how awesome your grandmother was, he had a little bit of a freak out.
Yeah,
and he's like,
Brad got upset once because
my grandma's cool, too.
I clearly had touched a nerve with him because I was just talking too much positive things about my grandmother, and I think it just made him jealous in the moment. Right. Yeah.
Too many positive things about my grandmother.
Yeah.
Just be like, bring her down to like our level, Tucker. Like, your grandma's not that cool all the time. God, what are you going to do? Hey, we're nearing episode 300.
I know, right?
And we got some good selections or suggestions of things to do, but we need more.
Right.
I like to eat 300 of something.
Right. I'm thinking we got to do it live, at least live stream it somehow.
I love that idea.
I don't think with an audience in the room with us. I think with an audience online.
Sure.
And we're in some space together.
I like
maybe
that.
bring in a guest or something like that, but that'd be fun.
Maybe a live band.
Right.
Like a live band who can play us in and play us out. What do you think of that?
Yeah, it'd be cool.
Yeah.
That'd be sweet.
I've got some ideas for what I want to do for 300. It's almost unthinkable to think that we are at 300 episodes of JJ Meets World.
I know, right?
Talk about something we've really followed through on.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's impressive. Especially like last week, we recorded our episode on Monday and then you got it released that day.
Yeah, schedules are tough in the summertime, but we're working it out.
So when we hit 300, I think that all the secrets will have to come out.
We'll have to finally divulge all the things we've been keeping from the audience.
All the stuff.
These past 300 years. Like the fact that you and I are legally married.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
But, you know, I think it was weird when it happened, but now it just seems so old hat.
Yeah, I know.
Jill's going to be so disappointed when she finds out it's not legally binding what I have with her. Also, someone asked me recently if I'm trying to step out on my marriage because I don't wear a wedding ring. And I'm like, no, I hate stuff on my hands or my wrists. There's this reason I don't wear a watch either.
Right. That's so common now for people to be like, hey, it just doesn't feel good on my hands. It's really ruined the ability to go, is this lady single or not?
Right.
It's really destroyed that because it's like, well, I don't see a ring, but that doesn't really mean anything anymore.
Right. Be like, we should have something called like an app on your phone called The Ring, where you just, when you pass by someone, you look at it and it says no go or thumbs up, you know, best of chance when you get to it. Okay. I've been sitting on this leather couch of yours now for a while and like my lower back's super sweaty. I'm a little worried that I've sweat so much that my blue jeans may have left a stain on this couch.
I bet I know the sound it's going to make when you get up.
I bet you don't. It's not going to be like no skin of mine is touching.
Okay.
So there's nothing that's going to like pull off of it. But like I'm definitely sweating through a t-shirt and overshirt. I'm definitely sweating through my underpants and jeans.
Your overshirt looks like it's made out of paper towel.
What's this is a special kind of cloth. It's
paper towel cloth.
No, it's not paper
It
towel.
looks like a paper towel.
It's what do they call this? It's fancy. It's what the fancy people wears. You know, it's
textured.
It's not pinafore. that's all I can think about right now. But that's not what it is.
It's like
seersucker. It's seersucker.
Oh, I didn't know that's what that was.
This is what seersucker looks like.
Okay, got it.
I got a pair of white seersucker pants. Really like them.
Really?
Yeah, I love them. Oh,
when do you wear white pants?
I not after Labor Day. But I wear white pants.
Just trying to remember last time I've seen you in white pants.
Oh, well, we don't interact on a regular basis. Only once a week.
I just think white pants are a ballsy move.
They are for a man like myself who enjoys hot wings and things as such.
For anyone who has, genitalia.
I can tell you this much. When I wear the white pants, I'm cognizant of it. So like I'm not doing things like I look at the places I'm about to sit. I normally don't do that. Also, I read a bizarre story today about a court case like in Ohio where this weird, creepy guy had gone into a Hooters and ordered a glass of water and said he was just looking at a menu. And then he kind of walked around and he had been spraying a solution on a bunch of the benches, like bench seats and stuff. And a girl sat on it and it was some kind of like hydrochloric acid and it ate through like her pants.
Holy shit.
And so they arrested this guy and he had said like, well, they always humiliate me. And so I wanted to hurt them.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Weird, huh?
Great note to end today's podcast on, I guess.
Yeah. Watch where you sit. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information. The thing is that I think I want to talk to a medium and tell that story about my mom, and then maybe my mom can cross over, take over the body, and let me know that it's okay. Or I'm in trouble.